The life story of Creflo Dollar begins in College Park, Georgia, in the early 1960s in a setting that would later be contrasted sharply with the global reach of his ministry. Born into a working-class household, he grew up in an environment shaped by discipline, faith, and modest means. His father worked in law enforcement, while his mother held a job in a school cafeteria, a detail that would later be repeatedly referenced in narratives about his rise because of its symbolic contrast with the wealth he eventually accumulated. His upbringing was not marked by privilege, but by structure and responsibility, where education and religion played central roles in daily life. As a young man, Dollar was not initially focused on ministry. Like many American youths of his era, he gravitated towards sports, particularly football, seeing it as a potential path to opportunity and advancement. He enrolled in college with athletic ambitions, but an injury disrupted those plans and forced him into a period of physical recovery and personal reflection. This moment is often described in accounts of his life as a turning point, not because it immediately transformed him into a preacher, but because it removed his original sense of direction and opened space for new influences to take root. During this transitional period, he began attending Bible studies. At first, his involvement was casual, more about filling time and seeking structure than pursuing a calling. However, over time, he reportedly experienced a personal spiritual awakening that shifted his outlook. This experience became the foundation for his eventual commitment to ministry. It is within these early stages that his identity began to change, moving from aspiring athlete to emerging religious leader. He completed his education in a field related to human services and briefly worked in a psychiatric or therapeutic setting, assisting individuals with learning challenges. This professional experience exposed him to human struggle in a different form and further influenced his understanding of care, communication, and leadership. Yet, even while working in this capacity, his involvement in Bible study groups deepened. Small gatherings began forming around his teachings, and his ability to communicate in a direct, practical manner attracted attention. It was also during this period that he met the woman who would become his wife, Taffy Dollar, who would later play a significant role in the development of his ministry. Their partnership would become both personal and professional, shaping the structure of what would grow into a large religious organization. By the mid-1980s, Dollar had reached a point where his informal teaching roles began to evolve into something more formal and structured, setting the stage for the creation of a church that would grow far beyond its humble beginnings. The formation of a ministry and the first congregation. The formal beginning of Creflo Dollar's ministry is often traced to the mid-1980s, when he established a small Bible study group that would eventually develop into a full church organization. This early congregation did not begin in a traditional church building, but in a school cafeteria in College Park, Georgia, a location that carried personal significance due to its connection with his family history. The initial gatherings were extremely small, reportedly consisting of only a handful of individuals, yet they formed the foundation of what would become a large and influential ministry. The environment of these early meetings was informal and highly personal. Rather than structured liturgy or traditional religious hierarchy, Dollar emphasized accessible language and practical interpretations of Scripture. His teaching style focused on direct application to everyday life, which resonated with attendees who were looking for religious guidance that felt relevant to modern challenges. As word spread, attendance began to increase steadily, and the group transitioned from a small study circle into a more structured church setting. During this period, Dollar also made significant personal decisions that reinforced his commitment to ministry over other career paths. Having previously considered other professions, he ultimately chose to dedicate himself fully to religious leadership. This decision marked a turning point, as it required abandoning more conventional career stability in favor of building something uncertain but potentially expansive. His wife became an active partner in this process, helping to support the organizational and spiritual development of the growing church community. As attendance increased, the ministry eventually adopted a formal identity, becoming known as World Changers Ministries Christian Center. The name itself reflected a broader vision of transformation, not just spiritually but socially and materially. The church began to attract individuals from outside the immediate local area, drawn by the message of personal empowerment and faith-based success. This growth was not instantaneous but gradual, driven by word of mouth, community engagement, and early media exposure. The relocation from a cafeteria setting to dedicated church facilities marked a symbolic shift. What had begun as a small group of believers meeting in an educational space was evolving into a structured religious institution. This transition laid the groundwork for future expansion, both in physical infrastructure and theological influence, as Dollar's teachings began to reach a wider audience beyond his immediate community. Development of the prosperity teaching and rising influence. As the ministry expanded, Creflo Dollar's teachings began to take on a more defined theological identity, particularly centered around what became widely known as the prosperity message. This doctrine emphasized the relationship between faith, positive confession, and material blessing. According to his teachings, believers could experience financial improvement, health benefits, and life success through disciplined faith practices, including consistent giving and verbal affirmation of spiritual promises. This message gained significant traction during the late 1980s and 1990s, particularly among audiences who were seeking hope during periods of economic uncertainty. For many followers, the idea that faith could directly influence material conditions was both empowering and transformative. It reframed religious practice not only as spiritual devotion but as a practical strategy for improving life circumstances. Dollar's communication style, which was direct and confident, contributed to the spread of this message through radio broadcasts, television programs, and live conferences. As interest grew, the ministry expanded its media presence. Broadcast programs allowed teachings to reach audiences far beyond Georgia, extending nationally and eventually internationally. Viewers from Africa, Europe, and other regions began engaging with the message, and the ministry developed a global following. This expansion significantly increased Dollar's influence and positioned him among a group of high-profile televangelists who shaped religious broadcasting during that era. However, as the prosperity message gained popularity, it also attracted criticism. Some religious scholars and commentators argued that the theology placed excessive emphasis on financial success and material outcomes. They questioned whether the interpretation of Scripture being presented was balanced or whether it encouraged unrealistic expectations among followers. Despite this criticism, the ministry continued to grow, and its messaging remained largely consistent. By the early 1990s, the church had rebranded and expanded structurally, reflecting its growing ambitions. Large-scale events and conferences became more common, and the ministry began establishing satellite locations and partnerships. This period marked the transition from a local church into a global religious organization with increasing administrative complexity and financial scale. The prosperity message, whether embraced or criticized, became the defining characteristic of Dollar's public identity. It shaped not only his teachings but also the perception of his ministry within broader religious and secular communities. As influence grew, so did scrutiny, setting the stage for future controversies that would challenge both his theology and leadership. Expansion into a megachurch and organizational growth. By the mid-1990s, Creflo Dollar's ministry had transformed into a large-scale religious organization with significant physical and financial infrastructure. One of the most visible symbols of this expansion was the construction of a massive worship facility, often referred to as the World Dome. This structure, capable of seating thousands of attendees, represented both the growth of the congregation and the ambition of the ministry's long-term vision. The construction and maintenance of such a facility required substantial financial resources, which were generated through donations, tithes, and media-related revenue streams. As attendance increased, so did the complexity of the organization. What had begun as a small church community had evolved into a multi-layered institution with administrative departments, media production teams, and international outreach programs. The scale of operations placed Dollar among the most prominent religious leaders in the United States during that period. Alongside physical expansion, the ministry also increased its media presence. Television programs, radio broadcasts, and recorded sermons became key tools for outreach. These platforms allowed the ministry to reach millions of viewers, further solidifying its influence. The messaging remained consistent with earlier teachings, focusing on faith, empowerment, and the belief in divine provision. However, as the organization grew, so did questions about financial structure and transparency. Large-scale ministries often operate with complex financial systems, and observers began to call for clearer reporting regarding revenue and expenditures. While supporters viewed the growth as evidence of divine blessing and effective leadership, critics argued that such scale required stronger accountability measures. Internally, the organization also became more structured, with leadership roles expanding beyond the founding couple to include administrative and operational staff. This allowed the ministry to function across multiple locations, including domestic and international branches. The vision of global expansion became a stated goal, with plans for additional fellowship churches and outreach centers. Despite the growth, the ministry also faced increasing public attention, not all of it positive. As visibility increased, so did scrutiny from media outlets, religious analysts, and financial watchdog groups. The combination of rapid expansion, wealth accumulation, and theological messaging placed the ministry in a position of both influence and controversy, setting up tensions that would continue to develop in later years. Wealth, lifestyle, and public scrutiny. As Creflo Dollar's ministry expanded, public attention increasingly turned toward his personal lifestyle and material possessions. Reports and media coverage often highlighted his ownership of multiple properties, luxury vehicles, and high-value assets. These included large residential estates, urban properties in major cities, and private transportation arrangements. For supporters, these were seen as signs of success and divine favor, consistent with the prosperity teachings he preached. For critics, however, they raised questions about consistency between message and personal practice. The discussion around wealth was further intensified by comparisons between Dollar's lifestyle and the financial realities of many of his followers. While congregants often lived in middle or lower income households, the pastor's reported assets placed him in a significantly higher economic category. This contrast became a central point of debate in discussions about megachurch leadership and religious accountability. One of the most frequently discussed aspects of his lifestyle was transportation, particularly the use of private aircraft for ministry travel. Supporters argued that such arrangements were necessary for international outreach and demanding schedules, while critics viewed them as symbols of excess. Similar debates surrounded his residential properties, which were often described in media reports as expansive and heavily secured. As public scrutiny increased, Dollar defended his position by framing his lifestyle as a result of faith-based principles rather than personal indulgence. He maintained that prosperity was a reflection of spiritual alignment and that material success was not inherently contradictory to religious leadership. This explanation, however, did not fully satisfy critics, who continued to question the optics and financial structure of the ministry. Watchdog organizations and investigative journalists also began examining financial transparency within large religious institutions, including Dollar's ministry. These inquiries focused on how donations were allocated, how leadership compensation was structured, and whether adequate financial disclosures were being made. While no universal consensus emerged, the scrutiny contributed to ongoing public debate. Over time, the conversation around wealth became inseparable from Dollar's public identity. It shaped how he was perceived not only as a religious leader, but also as a public figure operating at the intersection of faith, finance, and media influence. Financial accountability and government attention. As the profile of Creflo Dollar's ministry grew, so did attention from regulatory bodies and public oversight groups concerned with financial transparency in large nonprofit religious organizations. Questions emerged regarding how funds were collected, managed, and distributed within the ministry structure. These concerns were not unique to his organization but reflected broader debates about accountability in televangelist-led institutions. At one point, reports indicated that a government inquiry examined several prominent religious leaders, including Dollar, focusing on financial practices and potential misuse of tax-exempt status. While such inquiries often involve requests for documentation and voluntary compliance, they can also generate significant public attention, regardless of legal outcomes. In this case, the investigation did not result in criminal charges, but it contributed to ongoing scrutiny. Dollar and his organization reportedly resisted providing certain financial records to external oversight committees, citing concerns about separation between church and state and the autonomy of religious institutions. This position was defended by supporters as a matter of religious freedom, while critics interpreted it as a lack of transparency. The disagreement highlighted a broader tension in American law regarding the regulation of religious nonprofits. During this period, watchdog organizations began assigning ratings or evaluations to ministries based on financial disclosure practices. These assessments influenced public perception, especially among donors seeking accountability in charitable giving. While supporters of Dollar's ministry continued to trust its leadership, external skepticism grew in some circles. The issue of financial accountability became a recurring theme in media coverage. It intersected with discussions about wealth, leadership ethics, and the responsibilities of large religious organizations. Even in the absence of legal consequences, the perception of opacity had lasting reputational effects. This period marked a shift in how the ministry was viewed publicly. It was no longer discussed solely in terms of theology or growth, but increasingly in terms of governance, ethics, and financial stewardship. These conversations laid the groundwork for later controversies that would intensify public scrutiny. The Jet fundraising controversy and public reaction. One of the most widely discussed controversies involving Creflo Dollar emerged when his ministry initiated a fundraising campaign related to the acquisition of a private aircraft. The campaign centered around the need for a long-range jet to support international travel and ministry operations. According to the ministry's explanation, existing aircraft had experienced mechanical issues, and commercial travel schedules were considered incompatible with global outreach demands. The proposed aircraft was a high-value model, and the fundraising goal quickly drew public attention. Supporters were encouraged to contribute financially toward the purchase, with messaging emphasizing efficiency, safety, and expanded ministry capability. However, the campaign quickly became controversial, as critics questioned both the necessity and scale of the request. A major point of debate involved cost and justification. Critics argued that such an expensive aircraft was inconsistent with the financial realities of many donors, some of whom lived modestly. Others questioned whether more economical alternatives could achieve the same operational goals. These concerns were amplified by media coverage, which brought the campaign into national and international discussion. Aviation analysts and commentators also examined claims made in promotional materials, particularly regarding cargo capacity and humanitarian use. Some discrepancies between promotional messaging and technical specifications were highlighted, contributing to skepticism. This scrutiny intensified public debate about transparency and intent. In response to criticism, Dollar defended the campaign by emphasizing the practical needs of global ministry travel and rejecting the idea that spiritual leadership required financial modesty in all areas of operation. His statements reinforced his long-standing prosperity theology, asserting that faith and provision were interconnected. The campaign eventually faced significant backlash, and public attention led to its withdrawal or modification. However, the controversy left a lasting impact on public perception. It became one of the most frequently cited examples in discussions about wealth, religion, and accountability in modern televangelism. Family incident and legal attention. Another significant moment in Creflo Dollar's public history involved a domestic incident that led to legal attention and widespread media coverage. Reports from the time indicated that an altercation occurred within his household involving his teenage daughter, resulting in police involvement. The situation reportedly stemmed from a disagreement over attendance at a social event and escalated into a physical confrontation. According to publicly available accounts, law enforcement was called to the residence after the incident. Statements from involved parties differed, with differing interpretations of what occurred during the altercation. Allegations included physical restraint and injury claims, while alternative accounts described the situation as a disciplinary conflict that escalated unexpectedly. Dollar was taken into custody and faced charges related to family violence. The case quickly attracted national media attention due to his prominence as a religious leader. Public reaction was divided, with some expressing concern about conduct and others emphasizing the complexities of family discipline and legal interpretation. In the aftermath, Dollar addressed his congregation, offering his perspective on the incident and maintaining that his actions were misrepresented or misunderstood. The congregation reportedly responded with support, reflecting the strong loyalty within his community. Over time, the legal case was resolved without long-term criminal consequences, often described as being dismissed or concluded after compliance with court-ordered requirements. Despite the legal resolution, the incident remained part of broader public discussions about leadership accountability, especially among high-profile religious figures. It also contributed to ongoing debates about the relationship between private behavior and public authority. For many observers, the incident added a personal dimension to existing controversies surrounding the ministry. It highlighted the challenges faced by public figures whose personal lives become subject to media scrutiny and public judgment. Even after legal closure, the reputational effects continued to influence perception, the reversal on tithing and theological reassessment. One of the most unexpected developments in Creflo Dollar's ministry came when he publicly revisited and revised one of his most foundational teachings, the doctrine of tithing. For decades, tithing had been central to his message, presented as a biblical requirement and a key principle for spiritual and material blessing. It was embedded in sermons, books, and teaching materials that reached audiences worldwide. In a later public address, Dollar stated that his understanding of tithing had changed, and that aspects of his earlier teachings were no longer aligned with his current interpretation of Scripture. He encouraged followers to reconsider how they approached giving, emphasizing grace and voluntary generosity rather than obligation under religious law. This shift represented a significant theological adjustment within his ministry. The announcement generated strong reactions. Some viewed it as a moment of intellectual honesty and spiritual growth, suggesting that religious leaders are entitled to evolve in their interpretations. Others criticized the timing and implications, arguing that millions had contributed financially based on teachings that were now being reconsidered. This raised questions about the long-term impact of doctrinal changes on followers. Despite acknowledging the shift in perspective, Dollar did not offer restitution or financial reversal of past teachings. He maintained that his earlier ministry work had been conducted in good faith, based on his understanding at the time. This position was met with mixed reactions, reflecting the complexity of reconciling evolving theology with past practice. The change also reignited broader debates about prosperity theology as a whole. Critics argued that the reversal highlighted inconsistencies in teachings that link financial giving directly to material outcomes. Supporters, meanwhile, saw it as part of a natural progression in spiritual understanding. Regardless of interpretation, the announcement marked a turning point in how his ministry was perceived. It shifted focus from expansion and prosperity toward reflection and reassessment, legacy, public perception, and continuing debate. The legacy of Creflo Dollar remains complex, shaped by decades of ministry growth, theological influence, and public controversy. His impact on modern televangelism is significant, particularly in the development and global spread of prosperity-oriented teachings. Through television, conferences, and large-scale church operations, he built an international platform that reached millions of people across continents. At the same time, his career has been accompanied by sustained debate regarding wealth, transparency, and religious responsibility. Supporters view him as a visionary leader who empowered individuals to believe in possibility, success, and divine provision. Critics view his ministry as an example of the challenges that arise when religious messaging intersects with large-scale financial systems. Public perception of dollar is often divided along lines of theology, economics, and personal values. For some, his teachings provided hope during difficult times. For others, they raised concerns about accountability and the influence of prosperity-focused doctrine on vulnerable communities. These differing perspectives contribute to an ongoing conversation about the role of wealth in religious leadership. In later years, his shift in theological interpretation added another layer to his public identity. It demonstrated that religious thought is not static, and that even long-standing teachings can be re-examined. However, it also raised unresolved questions about the long-term effects of earlier messaging. Today, discussions about his ministry often extend beyond individual actions to broader systemic questions: how religious organizations manage finances, how leaders evolve in public view, and how followers interpret changing doctrine. These issues ensure that his influence remains a topic of discussion within religious and cultural analysis. Ultimately, his story is one of transformation, expansion, controversy, and reassessment. It reflects both the possibilities and tensions inherent in modern global ministry, where faith, media, and finance intersect in ways that continue to shape public discourse.